Well, hello everybody. Sorry I haven't been with you before now. Yeah, I literally just kind of flew in from Wales. I was there helping. So the IEGD just recently kicked off a new chapter in the UK called Dig UK. And one of their first things was to put on an accessible field course in Wales on the Isle of Anglesey. And they selected students. There were multiple wheelchair users. There were multiple students with autism. There were multiple students with mental health issues, all on the same trip. It was a week long. We had amazing weather for Wales standards. But a lot of a lot of things that we learned. I'd be happy to talk with you about that. And you know, the fun part of this one is that I wasn't leading it. I got to be there and evaluate and give them advice and suggestions and collect data and interview the students. And it was a really nice way for me to be involved in another direction. And every time I do this, I learn a ton. I also do want to comment on the use of the microphone and how important that is, because a lot of times we have non-apparent disabilities, and there are people in an audience of this size that use auditory devices that are actually connected to the microphone system, and they're not going to come out and tell you that, right? So when we use the microphone and we ask questions, and how many of us have heard, you know, my voice is big enough. In fact, in class yesterday, one of my students said I was intimidating, and I hear that a lot. But yeah, we all have loud voices, but we don't know, you know, I know this is being recorded as well, but we're not sure who we're marginalizing by not using something like that. So I'd encourage you to continue to do that. And another cool thing about this trip in Anglesey was, for the first time on one of our trips, we actually used a tour guide system. Has anybody used one of these on a field trip that they've led? So if you go to like the US Capitol, and you take one of the tours and you get a little headpiece, and whoever's leading the tour, it could be a huge group of people, and they're just talking to you like this and you hear it, right? We used one of these in the field because in Wales, the wind is ridiculous and you have to be right on top of everybody to hear the instructor. So we use these these tour guide systems to enable the instructor to talk normally and everybody to hear just fine. We actually had some students that at some of the sites that we selected had to be away from the rest of the group, but they were still engaged in the conversation and the social community that way too. So it's a very important thing. So I'm happy to be back. I've talked at some of these. Usually it's a face on the screen when I'm talking, so I'm glad to actually be here in person. I know that you have done a lot of work inwardly and thinking about your programs up to this point, and this session's going to be no different. I want you to kind of take yourself out of a role. Well, there's going to be multiple roles that I want you to think about. One is obviously the program director, but another role is that of your students, and understanding that your perspective and your reality isn't the reality of almost every single student that you're working with. So opening our minds and being aware and flexible and unbiased and all those kinds of things. So we're going to talk about how you would evaluate your program. There's going to be some time to talk with each other and share ideas and say, yeah, I'm doing a great job, and pat yourself on the back, or say, you know, I could be doing better with this too. But the big thing that I want us to think about, and I was at NSF a couple of months ago and I talked about this there, is, are you really doing something, or are you just saying you're going to do something? And we see this a lot in proposals for funding when say, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And it happens to be, you know, and yeah, we would welcome students with disabilities into this program too. Or you're not really designing it for them. You're going to kind of put that on at the end as a way of saying, our proposal is fantastic because we said that. So I want you to think about it. Are you really prepared to support all of your students, or are you just saying that you're prepared to do so? So I come into this, and there's already a really great community developed. I come in, and everybody's talking to everybody. So it kind of ruins my thunder on what I'm going to do here. But I want you to think about when you first got here yesterday. when you first got here, or some of you might have got here the day before, what is the first thing you did when you arrived into this group? Okay? When you came here, who did you sit with? Who did you walk up to and introduce yourself to? Is it somebody that you already knew? I see a lot of you sitting next to each other, probably because you're familiar with that person, right? Very first thing I did when I got here is I walked straight to Rebecca because it's a friendly face. Actually, I saw Val on the way in, so yeah, I did not. I did not. Okay, so did you just sit by yourself? Some of us this is our first time at this meeting. Did you come in and sit by yourself thinking, I hope somebody talks to me? I hope somebody talks to me. Or did you sit down with somebody that you didn't know, and what did you say to them? Okay? Think about the last time that you actually did something with or got to know someone who was different than you. How did that work out for you? Was it recent? Has it been a while? And I mean very different from you, right? They don't look like you. They don't act like you. Heaven forbid, they don't think like you, right? They don't do things the way you do. How did you feel? Was it comfortable? No? Did you learn something about yourself? Did you learn something about someone else? Maybe challenged your misconceptions a little bit? So I want you to think about this, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about this internally, and then I want you to turn to a neighbor, and I want you to try to come up with a definition for this. Don't go to Google. Don't go to Google. What does it mean to be inclusive? Take about 30 seconds right now and think about that to yourself, and then I'm going to have you turn to a neighbor, and I want to hear some of these ideas. All right, turn to somebody next to you and see if you can come up with a working definition of inclusion. Thanks for passing those out. How you doing? Okay, who wants to give me an example? Who wants to give me an example? Who has it all figured out? Who has everything figured out? Who has it figured out? All right, here it is.
I don't know if it's figured out
Come
or
on
not,
now.
but to be accepting of everyone, irrespective of race, gender, sexual orientation, or any other characteristic.
It's pretty deep, Reggie. Pretty deep. That's good. It is Reggie. He's deep. Thank you. Somebody else? Yes.
So
use that mic.
More than
It's on.
more than just being accepting is you have to create an environment that can include them.
Can you elaborate? What would that environment look like?
So it has facilities for everyone. It has the patience for everyone. It has the time to engage with everyone and the ability to let everyone who participates succeed.
Okay, thank you. We got one more over here. Thank you.
I think we said it has to be a safe, nurturing, genuine, inclusive, and sense of belonging.
Good word. Good word.
One of the things we talked about was actively being aware when you're not being inclusive, so that you can take some action to do something about it.
That's a challenge, isn't it? Do you think that we're able to be aware? It takes a little bit of effort, doesn't it?
Effort, and you can't be a mind reader.
True. One more? One more?
So, and beyond creating that environment, which is obviously has to happen, you also need to populate that environment. So bring kind of forcibly, perhaps, bring a wide variety of people into that environment.
Yeah, when I think of inclusion, I think of force. Forcefully. Yeah, one more, Andy.
Hi, Diane encouraged me to share. And this isn't my original thought. It's from, I worked in an internship with Chevron, and they're getting away from the idea of diversity. And they said that their inclusion policy was, or diversity was everyone from all demographics being invited to the party, but inclusion was getting asked to dance. And I thought that was a good analogy, and I always think of that when I think about inclusion, of like,
I like it.
giving the space. So, thank you.
Good, thank you. So nothing wrong with any of these ideas or any of these thoughts. Nothing wrong with them. It's physical, it's intellectual, right? It's social. It's establishing sense of belonging, establishing trust, remaining flexible, all of those things. So I want you to think about your REU specifically. And I know not everybody in here is running an REU, but think about a program that you run or a program that you're involved with if you're not running an REU. Are you prepared to be inclusive? You don't have to answer that right now with a yes or a no question, response. We're going to go through them. Are you prepared to be inclusive? Are you prepared to be accessible? And access does not necessarily mean physical access all the time. Okay? And do you and your staff encourage diverse perspectives and abilities? You can encourage it, right? And I wrote myself a note here to make sure I said it right, but do you listen when ideas and perspectives are different than yours? You can encourage people to want to listen or want to have diverse perspectives, have diverse abilities in your programs, but when they come up and say something that you weren't thinking about, are you listening to that? Are you prepared to make a change in your program according to what an expert, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, what an expert brings to you? Okay? All right, so we're going to take 5 minutes on this one. Consider your promotion and recruitment materials. I know that there's been some other little small breakout sessions and things that you probably were considering this already. All right, but I want you to consider your promotion and recruitment materials, websites, videos, images, the flyer, how you promote your program. I want you to think about that. Who are you leaving out? Who are you leaving out? What barriers are you presenting just in the awareness of your program? Okay? Let's take 3 minutes on this. I want you to talk to the people around you, share what you do, what kind of strategies and tricks that you use. 3 minutes, I'm going to give you another question to go with this one. We'll spend the rest 2 minutes on that, okay? Go ahead. So, what's our updated time? I think this started. I think it's 30 minutes for. That's what it was blocked out for. That's what I was thinking, like maybe a quarter till. I think it was a quarter. Was it 10?
It depends how much time you need.
Yeah, I'll try to have it wrapped up by a quarter after if that works.
I I mean that after this is a share-a-thon, so
Okay.
it's not one specific speaker anymore. They're all going to go out there and
Oh, good.
share
Okay.
stuff,
All
it doesn't really
right. So I'll have it wrapped up by 6.
Yeah. I have a concert to go to, so
Do you really?
I'm out of here.
Where are you going?
Red Rocks.
For who? Let me have your attention, please. So now I want you to take that a step further. And how about your application process? The interview and the selection. Okay? Consider the inclusivity of those. Are we leaving people out? Are we inserting bias unknowingly? Okay? Take 2 minutes, talk about how you go through this recruitment and selection process, okay? Take 2 minutes. Okay, let me bring you back together. Let me bring you back together. Hello, hello. Hello. Okay. Man, you guys are going at it. I like it. So, hopefully, in your conversations, you talked about demonstrating a commitment to access and inclusion. Okay? And in doing so, I want you to think about your materials. Do you present your materials through multiple means of representation? If those of you are familiar with Universal Design for Learning. If you're not, check it out. Okay? You're not just presenting a flyer. If you're using a video, you're captioning that video. If you're captioning that video, maybe you're using descriptive audio as well. Has anybody ever seen a video that has not only captioning but descriptive audio? Right? No? So descriptive audio is if you cannot see the video, you're listening to the audio, but then it's also describing what's going on in the video as well. It's a different voice. So you have the voice that's narrating, right? But then you have a different voice and they speak really fast that describes what is going on in that video. You don't see it a lot, but it's very, very helpful. Think about audio, think about visual, think about captioning. Will students, through your process, will students feel like they belong the moment that they see your materials? The moment that they go to your website, are they recognizing something? Are they relating to something? Or if it's a wheelchair user that goes to your website and all they see is pictures of people in the field getting dirty and getting muddy and all those kinds of really exciting things that completely marginalize people. All right? What are they seeing when they go to your website? What are they seeing in the videos that you present? What are they seeing in the flyers? Do the images present mainly field work, even though that's not exactly what you do in your program? Are they giving equal time to every aspect of your program? What's the gender breakdown in your materials? What's the racial and ethnic breakdown? What's the disability status breakdown in your materials? Yeah, question. Of course you do.
All right, so we were actually discussing this, and on your website, if you've got photos of your lab, if you want to be inclusive of a certain race or all races, but you don't contain those people in your lab at the moment, what do you do? Because you don't want to lie, you don't want to put pictures up that aren't true. Yeah. So how do you work around that? No,
it's true, and there's a lot of universities that are just kind of bound by what you get, right? I think in your text and your description, you address that. You hit it head on. You know, we realize that we're not promoting diversity, but we're completely open to students from diverse populations. Good question. Any other comments to that? Yes.
I was just going to add in that, you know, I know from my own experience when I'm looking at websites of schools to partner with, I can absolutely tell when they're just putting up pictures of stock images of mixed demographics so that they can show, you know, because it scrolls through their header, but then when you look at you dig deep and look at their actual demographics, you can see, oh, they picked their 3 students of color and put them all over the front of the website. Yeah. So I think you actually do a disservice by trying to play that up if that's not true.
Because then they show up and they're like, where are they all at? Yeah, right behind you, Rebecca.
There was an even worse story in the news today, I don't know if anyone saw it, of a college that they photoshopped a crowd of white students to make some of them appear as people of color.
Yeah. The problem is the photo still had the watermark on it from they bought it from the web or something. No. All right, good. So let me take this even a step further, is through the application process, are you presenting bias unknowingly by the questions you ask? In the application, if you interview students, are you asking for questions that demonstrate privilege, maybe when you're not really meaning to do that? Are you asking students for what leadership positions they held, what extracurricular activities they've been involved in, when they don't have those opportunities to do? And Val brought up a really great point when we were talking about all this, is she said, how many applications go uncompleted? And you wonder, are the questions turning them off? Are they thinking right away through the process of applying, this isn't for me, I don't belong here, right? There's nothing I can answer to this question, which means I'm not going to be a strong candidate for this program. I can't. So I'm not even going to finish this. Do we have another one up here? Oh, it's over there.
Thank you. I really appreciate these thoughts. I have to say we asked exactly these questions. We ask, tell us about, relevant experience, where something you want to share with us, like leadership skills, additional, where you've put your heart in. I can't remember how we said this, but we're asking these questions. What should we ask that is more inclusive?
Great. I was going to ask it anyway. Good.
So I'm Tara Cox from Savannah State, and I don't have the exact wording. I've been trying to find it on my phone. But 4 years ago, Chris gave this talk, and we changed our process entirely based on this talk. And the essay question, we have 3 essay questions. The first one is the standard, what's your science background? Why do you want to do this? The second question, and I'm going to flub it, but We value diversity in every sense of the word. So, and we find that the greatest strengths lie in overcoming adversity. So please describe a situation that you overcame, a difficulty in your life and how it shaped your future goals or something to that effect. And it's in the application process, but it also helps us do an evaluation a little bit deeper than all of those other
So that
factors.
demonstrates a commitment across the board. Anybody can respond to that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh Lord. See, I'm happy to provide it. Yeah, and I'll have to email it because we've closed our application and then we'll open it again. So I can't dig it up, but I can send it because that was so good.
Where you overcame
Describe
adversity. Here in a minute, we're going to have about 10 different versions. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I
can. You want to share it out?
I'll share it with the listserv.
Okay. Right behind you.
So that's a great statement. We've been working really hard with our university to put that on all of our job application announcements as well. And that too is a struggle. My concern is this, and sort of see this, our process, we have people who select which faculty they might want to work with, and that group of students goes to each individual faculty member. We struggle, in many cases, trying to have them not just pick students who, oh, look, someone applied from Harvard. And then we try and explain what our process is and what's important. And what I get concerned with is how we, when we have a statement like that, if we do that in lieu of the essays that say, what experience do you have? Then we start losing some of the things that will allow our faculty to say, I want this student. And
maybe you need new faculty.
Well, that could be too, but
that could be too.
Yeah, but
Yeah, sure.
But it's a truth, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I would say our faculty have done great. They come to our meetings now, and they know what we're looking for, and so their top picks are in there, but there's still a push that they want.
So how can you ask those questions differently by saying, look, this has no bearing on your selection, but it has everything to do with where you would be placed when you would be accepted, right? So that students realize that, okay, if I don't have anything to say here, it's not going to take me out of the running. But something like that. I'm not saying that that's what you should do, but something very similar to that. Yeah, an optional question. Yeah, good question though. Any other thoughts? One more.
Hi, I was thinking about what you said as far as extracurricular activities. So being on the north slope of Alaska, we're whaling communities. And so the students spend much of their time whaling or caribou hunting. The females are also involved in both those processes and going out picking berries and things like that. And that's their extracurricular activities. So I think that would be something to consider. It takes a lot to go into whaling, You need to know the oceans, you need to know the atmosphere, things like that. So it's not like they don't know, it's just in a different context.
Right.
One approach that a colleague of ours, Mary Ann Smith at Citrus Community College, she has students who, many of whom work jobs at shops and things like that, 25 hours a week. And she will say, what do you do in your spare time? And then having the committee, the selection committee, bringing up the point that, well, maybe they can't afford the time and the money to be a treasurer in the local chapter of the MS because they're busy working a job and taking care of their younger sibling or something like that. But look at this. They've been working at Walmart for 3 years, and that shows a lot of responsibility and dedication and, to consider that element of privilege, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Good. Couple more here before we move on.
I just want to say that a lot of the questions we've been discussing here have been very backward-looking questions. We try to have a very explicit forward-looking outlook where we say, yeah, okay, your experience and what you've done in your spare time and all that, yeah, that's fine, but what are your goals? And how does this program advance you towards those goals? Mm-hmm. And that's very inclusive because now everybody's starting from the same point.
It's a really good question, and it might be something similar to think about, that you get their interests and their, you know, what they want to go after, right?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment about that. You know, okay, we can ask this about spare time. And, you know, I worked a couple of jobs while I was an undergrad, and I would never have considered my work as my spare time. And I would never list that. I would have said, what spare time?
Sleep.
That would have been, yeah, I sleep, that's it.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I just want to make that comment since I...
Yeah, good. Okay, nice. Good conversation here. Let me talk to you about bias really quick. This is a trip that I took a few years ago. And I've been working in disabilities and access and inclusion for quite a while. Let me just say that. And these were maps. This was actually a trip that we did in Vancouver in connection with the GSA in 2014. And we created these maps of the area. It was one of our accessible field trips. And these were both tactile, so using sandpaper, using puff paint, those kinds of things. We had a few students on the trip that were blind. And so I walked up and I said, oh, that's awesome, she's using the map. And so I said, hold it up there, I want to take your picture. Let me just tell you, this is completely fake, right? And her personal assistant there is smiling, and they're both looking at it, and they're happy. And let me ask you, why is she looking at it? This is what she was doing when I saw her, and I said, oh, cool, hold the map up so I can see that you're using it. She was using it right here. She was using it. And through my perspective, you have to look at a map. Through her perspective, she didn't need to look at a map, right? I still have a lot to learn. I learn every single day about something that I have a bias about. And so be aware. Be aware that the way you do things in your day-to-day life and your day-to-day activities isn't the way that someone else would do it. All right? How diverse is your program staff? I should say are. That's bad grammar. How diverse are your program staff? Think about who you have. Are you demonstrating diversity? Now, again, this goes back to who you have available, of course. Right? You're not going to go out to the mall or something and say, can I take your picture so we can put it up on the website? Because we don't have anybody. Okay, but think about that. If you are trying to recruit students into your program and it's a bunch of old white guys, how is that going to look for a student that wants to come and really get engaged with a community? Think about how you might be turning people off just by the staff that you've selected. And sometimes we don't have, like I said, we don't have control over that. But realize that that's a big factor in how some students view a program. All right? So thinking about this, I love using this quote on a lot of my presentations. We need to move beyond our own beliefs. We have this vision of how we want things to work. Right? We all got to this point in life not because we're lazy, not because we don't have our own goals and our own aspirations. We don't have drive and motivation. We didn't get here because we don't have any of that. We have very strong beliefs. Unfortunately, our very strong beliefs cause us to put a huge amount of barriers in front of our students. Our students might not have those same values you do. So you need to step away from what you believe and remain flexible and open. I still remember the very first meeting I had with my PhD advisor. And she told me, I'm working on this project. And granted, I had a family by this time. I had 2 daughters. They were young. I had a full-time job. I wasn't dropping everything to go to school full-time. I could not afford to do that. So I was working a full-time job and then taking classes to get my toe in the door of the PhD program. And she says, I have this program, it's funded, and you're more than welcome to jump on this project with me. And I told her, and I still remember this conversation, I said, I really appreciate that, but I'm not really interested in doing that. That topic does not interest me. And she goes, perfectly fine. I'll support you with whatever it is you want to do. Right? And that was a huge moment for me, because I ended up doing a project that was completely out of her wheelhouse. And she was there with me every step of the way and encouraging me the best that she could. It helped that, she was like a mom to me. She still is. Every time I see her, she's asking me mom questions, which is awesome. I love her to death. But, are we doing that with our own students, or are we pushing, this is what you have to do? This is what you have to do. And that one conversation I had with her has made an amazing impact on me, I would like to think, on my students. I have students that come in, and I repeat that same conversation with them. Some of them end up working on the same things I'm doing, and those are my best students. But some of them don't. All right? Okay. All right, so step away from your own beliefs and your own interests and your own hard-headedness. Okay, next one. Consider your activities. And while you consider your activities, what you have your students doing, what they will be doing, what are the barriers present? What are the barriers present for someone with a social disability? Mental health issues, anxiety, depression, any physical disabilities, both apparent and non-apparent. Those non-apparent disabilities have a really interesting way of showing up when you least expect them to. People don't just come out and say, oh, by the way, I have this. They don't want to be judged. They don't want to be stereotyped. So they keep that kind of information to themselves. And then it shows up, and then you have to do something about it. Cultural barriers, socioeconomic barriers. This is a big one too. All right? 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Talk with the folks around you. And I have another question to follow up. Yeah, this discussion's going really well. So I have another one. I think I might have like 6 or 7 more slides, but with another thought. Let me try and wrap it up by 4:30.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
We'll try and cut these discussions down a little bit. See you tomorrow? Okay. Have fun tonight. Be careful. Okay, let me have your attention really quickly. Let me just jump in real quick. Let me jump in real quick and you get back at it. But now as you talk about this, I want you to think about okay, you've identified barriers. You've identified that this might be a little bit marginalizing to some certain students. Okay? We've identified that we have very few people, we have very, very little diversity in our program. We've identified that. Okay? What are you doing to actively promote that you're addressing these barriers? How are you outwardly promoting this? How are you hitting it head on and saying, we realize that we might not have a lot of pictures that show diversity, but we have a commitment to this, okay? Let's finish this out 2 more minutes on that, okay? How are you actively, you might not be, but how could you be, okay? That was good. Well, we're not. All right, well, let's move on. So you plan for these, and you don't expect that the conversation is going to be so rich, you know? This could be a whole day thing. Yeah, yeah. Okay, about 10 seconds here. Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. You guys look like you're about to fall asleep.
I'm struggling.
Yeah, long day. No. Yeah. Okay, let me get your attention, please. So I want to hear from 2 of you. 2 of you, because Val is monitoring my time. So I just want to hear from 2 of you. So give me an example of what you could be doing, or if somebody is doing this, I want to hear from them. So what could we be doing to actively promote how we would address barriers in our program? That was a lot of conversation going on, so don't tell me you didn't. Talking about dinner or what?
So a colorblind student, and in geoscience is notoriously colorful. So maps, PowerPoints, so had to find out, they can see shades. It was my education, so I've print out everything, work with other students. But what I'm not aware is how to not always not get the attention of, by doing actively trying to address it, am I identifying him every time,
Good question. Good question. So are you actively trying to call a student out, or are you just saying we're aware that we utilize a lot of these maps and we will do everything that we can to make sure that that is addressed? Okay? Because what it is you want to do is you want a student to say, okay, good, I can feel supported there. Another one? Over here.
The first one right off the bat is just the financial piece, the socioeconomic one. And I think a lot of programs do this, but for programs who don't do this, you might want to consider this, which is front-loading your stipends. You have a lot of students with low economic backgrounds that come in and they need that stipend check in the first week to survive the next month, and then having the second check cut halfway through the program. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. What we could do is, and we don't do this, but we will do this, is on our website stating and trying to promote the openness to try to make things work for and students from those different backgrounds, or other types of abilities. I'm, as a person who's just temporarily not able to walk around, that's something that we also have to consider. We have students that, for one reason or another, just now they can't move around as well, or have some other challenges to fulfilling their research.
So those are really two great things that you could easily put up on a website. The financial one right away, because you know you're going to have students that are just struggling. They might not even consider applying because they know that they can't step away from what their job, okay? But the other one, access and being flexible and modifying the way things are done, yeah, that's a really great thing to put. If you get to the point where you have something written, I'd love for you to share that out with us. If somebody else has something written like that too, you've got a great network of people around you, so share those kinds of things. Okay, great. This is my favorite slide. This is the hard reality, and it's going to hit a lot of you in the ego. Reggie, are you paying attention? I noticed you're waving to Diana here. Okay? You may be knowledgeable, Reggie, all right? But you're not an expert. You're not the expert. And you might be an expert when dealing with African American students, okay? You can relate. So just for sake of transparency, a white male, heterosexual, no disability status. And I do all my work with students with disabilities. The students are the experts, okay? All of our students are the experts. We cannot possibly put ourselves in their shoes and expect that we know what they're going through, okay? Do not make assumptions, and I wrote this down too to make sure I said it right. Do not make assumptions for their needs and for their abilities, what it is that they need from you, okay? So why do we constantly, and we do this in our classes, we do this in our field courses, we do this everywhere, why do we constantly design something without the voice of the students that we're trying to support? Why do we do that? Why do we do that? So if you want to make your REU better, why not reach out to students that have gone through your REU in the past, that might be from diverse populations, that might have had disabilities or temporary disabilities along the way? Why not say, how can we improve this, and let them tell you how to do it? I don't know what I'm talking about. You shouldn't listen to me, okay? All right, so let me give you an example. This last July, I was asked to go on a GIS REU in Belize. It was tough. Let me tell you. It was tough. This was one of the students. This is why I went. They accepted a student, an autistic student. An autistic student. This is something that I just learned recently too, that it's autistic student. It's not person first when you're talking about autism. Autistic students, that is their identity. I've been corrected by several of them. That's our identity. So we are autistic students. We're not students with autism. Something I didn't know. However, this was one of the students on that trip. He had a really, really tough job. He was learning how to fly drones to map islands on the barrier reef. Whew. How many would have signed up for that? Okay? So Josh was selected into a REU that required him to interact every single day with community members. Here you have a social disability, and a big part, a significant part of his day-to-day task for this 30-day trip to Belize was to work with people he didn't know. All right? Let me tell you that it manifested itself very, very differently, something that I didn't expect. And it manifested itself very physical for Josh. In that first week, we got to the point where he was scratching. Right? His teammates were noticing. And I said, they came up and said, you might want to ask him what's going on. I went up and I said, hey man, when's the last time you took a shower? He said, I don't know. I said, when's the last time you brushed your teeth? I don't know. When's the last time you ate something? I don't know. So we took him out of the morning activities, and we went back to his place, got him cleaned up, took him to the grocery. He got something to eat. He was so focused, he knew he had to be engaged in the team building exercises. He had to go out at night and go to dinner so that he can connect with his teammates. He was doing all these things. He was so focused on doing all these things that he completely gave up on the things that he needed to do, right? So we sat down after we got him all cleaned up and got him fed, and we made a list of non-negotiables. I wasn't able to spend the whole 30 days with him. I was with him for about 8 days. And after I left, he would email me every now and again saying, I just want to let you know, Dr. Atchison, I'm doing a really great job with my hygiene, and I'm eating every day. It was amazing. It was amazing. And we're working with him now on a publication about his experiences. So it's pretty awesome. It was one of those moments in my life that just is something that, I'll always be impacted by students like this. So here's a good picture of him actually out doing his job. Again, it was really tough, but he was so excited to learn how to fly that drone. He was so excited to take, what'd they say? Football fields and football fields and football fields full of data. It was cool. This is a great shot of him working with kids in the community, something I would never have thought I would be able to see. But those kids were glued to him. He just had this charisma about him. And I know that at the end of the day, he just completely crashed because he put so much time and effort and energy into doing this that it took a big toll on him physically, right? So I present this to you as an example. What are you doing with your REU program that's going to enable a student like this to participate? Then let me tell you, you're going to be uncomfortable just as much. So prepare yourself for that. But let me tell you, the impact it's going to have on you, not just the student, but you, will be astronomical. So we're going to kind of breeze through this one. We're not going to take time to discuss this. I want to throw this up here as a way for you to think about it. Are you prepared to support all students in your program? All students who are interested in your program, are you prepared to do that? How will you assess every aspect of your program? How will you evaluate the capabilities of your staff, from mentoring to support to anything? What help do you need, and how are you going to get it? What help do you need right now? How are you going to get it? Develop a plan for that. Well, let me just throw this out. Wow, how timely. You each should have got a sticker that Rebecca threw out at you. So the IEGD is an organization that was established to support, initially, faculty who were accommodating students in introductory level geology courses, right? You might have had a student with a disability. You didn't know how to actually support them, so you create your own materials. The Offices of Disability Services don't really step in when you're doing a lot of that kind of stuff. But what would happen is they'd develop all these materials, and then when that student would move on, they just went into a drawer and never to be seen again. And then across the country, somebody does the exact same thing. So this was a way of organizing a network of people to share those resources. And so, like I said earlier, now we've expanded. I think we have representation in about 35 different countries around the world. We have a new chapter in London, or in the UK. We had a kickoff event in June at the Geological Society. But let me just say, if you happen to be at GSA this year in Indianapolis, our annual meeting, you are more than welcome to come. And I promise we won't get you involved in doing things right away. This is something I do want to make sure I promote. This is something that will have an impact on all of you. We give an award, 2 awards, an Inclusive Geoscience Education and Research Award. If you know somebody that's doing something exceptional to include a student or students with disabilities in their teaching or in their research, we want to hear about it, okay? You can go to the website, you can go to the IEGD website and go under the IGER Award, and you can post a nomination. We need people to nominate for that. So if you know somebody that's doing something exceptional in teaching and research, please do nominate them. Diversity is not the issue. I've got 2 slides left, maybe 3. Diversity is not the issue. Equity, inclusion, accessibility, opportunity, social justice. Those are all the issues. Diversity is there. What are you going to do to support diversity? Be uncomfortable. Right? You have the potential to impact the future of STEM by the things that you do, the changes that you make, the work that you do with students that you would have never considered getting involved in your programs. And let me know how I can help you get there. All right? Thanks, guys. Thanks, Val.
Thank you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a consulting service where people can ask you to? Yeah. Can they send you a picture of their website and you give them feedback? Thank you so much. Yeah, it makes you think about it. That's for sure. Okay, so this wraps up our plenary session, and we have. And I thank you for hanging in there. It's been already a pretty long day.